Hello everyone. In this video we will going to discuss about the construction joints and its need. So generally why we need construction joints in concrete structures. As we know, beams and slabs are the flexural members which resist the load by flexure. We can build a continuous slab or beam without any joint, that is we can cast it for a long span. But it will not be fruitful because every RCC masonry structures are susceptible to thermal variations. It will expand or contract according to the environmental condition. If we do not provide a minimum gap at a regular interval, then cracks will form and may lead to the failure of the concrete structure. So to overcome that problem, we generally provide joints in this kind of structures. So according to the site conditions, there are four types of joints we provide generally. One is your construction joint, second one is your expansion joint, third one is your contraction joint, and fourth one is your isolation joint. Construction joints. These joints are installed to break up the structure into smaller units in accordance with the production capacity of the construction site. For monolithic concrete, a good construction joint might be a bonded interface that provides a watertight surface and allows for flexural and shear continuity through the interface. For example, if we cast a road slab that is of 75 meter in length in one day, if we are able to cast only 40 meters and the remaining portion, that is another 35 meter, we have to cast in the next day, so in that case we generally have to provide a construction joint. If there should be any doubt as to the adequacy of the bond between the old and new concrete, the reinforcement crossing the construction joint should be supplemented by dowel bars. So because laterally this type of construction joints is provided in that case where a fresh concrete and a old hardened concrete surface joints or merge at a point. So this type of construction, this type of joints is provided there. Okay, as you can see in the figure, these type of joints allow the relative movements of surfaces in horizontal directions, as well as you can see, okay, rotations are there also. In first and second figure you can clearly see that. Expansion joints. We know different building materials have their different coefficient of expansion values. Materials generally expand or contract according to site conditions and environmental conditions. That means if heating condition will arise, material will try to expand. Similarly, when cold condition arise, material will try to contract. And this, if this relative changes is obstruct, that leads to your crack in the structure and may lead to the failure of the structure. So to overcome that situation, we are providing the expansion joint. Basically, expansion joint allows for the relative movement, that means the expansion and contraction of the concrete during the curing period and during the service. These joints are used to permit dimensional changes in the concrete due to load, and this joint also allow relative movements or displacement due to expansion and contraction. So this is the main purpose of providing expansion joints. The building longer than 45 meter span are generally provided with one or more expansion joint. In India, the recommended value is center to center spacing is 30 meter. That means at every 30-meter intervals we have to provide the expansion joint. Okay, you can see the figure of expansion joint here. Expansion joint is provided here. Contraction joint. So we have already discussed that what is expansion and contraction of material, and we also discussed what is expansion joint, and this is another type of joint that is known as a contraction joint. So in this case, a so-called gap is provided which allow the contraction and prevent the structure from cracking. Contraction joint in concrete slab is generally provided to prevent random cracking. That means you can see in the figure a so-called depth is provided. For example, if the depth of the slab is D, the so-called provided on the joint is at a depth of 1 by 4th of D. You can see in the figure, so-called contraction joint it is called. 1/4 of the depth is provided and the so-called width is very less, very negligible amount, and this will provide or this will allow the contraction movement so that the structure will not crack completely. Okay. Isolation joint. This type of joint is generally provided where a wall, column or a drain meets at a point. Its main purpose is to make the slab completely isolated from something else. Why we are providing this type of joint? As we know, slab is a horizontal structure or horizontal member, or column is a vertical member, and wall also a vertical member of the structure. In different condition, environmental condition, for example heat and cold temperature condition, their expansion and contraction will be in different directions. So if we merge this structure, for example slab and column, that means we are obstructing the relative movement of both the structures, that means column and also slab, which may lead to the cracking of the structures. That's why we are providing the isolation joint to overcome that condition, adverse condition. So now the column will independent to move for his movement, and also slab. So this type of joint allows the free movement of both vertical and horizontal structure. As you can see in this figure, this is a close view. You can see in this figure, column is there and a slab is there, and the isolation joint is provided on the left hand side. Okay, so this joint will completely isolate the column and the slab portion. Okay, so this is called isolation joint. Hope this video will helpful for you. Thank you.